Welcome to Passions Illustrated. Before starting the video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. The reflection in the Callahan's Brewery bathroom mirror didn't lie. Ryan Anderson ran his fingers through his messy brown hair, trying to ignore the knot forming in his stomach. Outside, his 30th birthday party was in full swing, but all he could think about were the smiles and glances his fiancée Sophia Parker had exchanged with Bradley Thompson. Throughout the evening, Bradley was the new creative director of the advertising agency where Sophia worked. Tall, athletic, and always impeccably dressed, he represented everything that Ryan was not. While Ryan spent his days developing software at a promising startup in Denver, Colorado, Bradley traveled the world presenting million-dollar campaigns for international clients. "You okay, man?" The voice of Mason, his best friend since college, echoed through the bathroom. "Sophia's looking for you." Ryan forced a smile. "I'm fine, I just needed a minute." But he wasn't fine. The last 3 hours had been torture. Sophia, a normally discreet and centered, looked like a dazzled teenager. Every time Bradley opened his mouth to talk about his trips to Paris or his meetings in Tokyo, Bradley said that Bradley did that. It was as if no one else at the party mattered. Back in the pub's private lounge, Ryan observed the setting he had carefully chosen to celebrate this special date: the exposed brick walls, the low and cozy lights, the rustic wooden tables. Everything had been designed to create an intimate and relaxed atmosphere. 30 people, including close friends and family, filled the space with laughter and lively conversation. Sophia was sitting at one of the main tables, her elegant figure highlighted by the navy blue dress Ryan had complimented her on earlier. Her blonde hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and her green eyes sparkled as she laughed at something Bradley had just said. 5 years of relationship seemed to melt away before that scene. "So you literally saved the campaign at short notice?" Sophia's voice sounded impressed, almost reverent. Bradley leaned slightly towards her, lowering his voice as if sharing a precious secret. "The client was already leaving the room when I had the idea. Sometimes pressure gets the best of us, doesn't it?" Ryan approached the table holding his craft beer a little tighter than necessary. "Sophia, can we talk for a minute now?" she asked, her eyes still fixed on Bradley. "Bradley was just telling you about that amazing campaign for Nike." Ryan's heart squeezed. It wasn't just the blatant flirting that bothered him, it was the way Sophia seemed to have changed into someone else over the last few weeks. Ever since Bradley had arrived at the agency, the determined, gentle woman he had fallen in love with seemed to have been replaced by someone he barely recognized. "It's important," Ryan insisted, keeping his voice calm despite the storm roaring in his chest. In the pub's small back garden lit by decorative lamps, Ryan finally found the courage to confront a reality he had been avoiding for weeks. "What's happening to us, Sophia?" She blinked confused. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about." Bradley Thompson, the looks, the smiles, the forced laughter. "It's my 30th birthday, and you've barely looked at me all night." "You're being ridiculous," Sophia defended herself, crossing her arms. "Bradley is my boss, of course. I need to maintain a good working relationship with him." "Professional relationship?" Ryan laughed humorlessly. "Is that what you call what's going on in there?" The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan watched Sophia's face, looking for any sign of the woman he had fallen in love with, any trace of the complicity they had built up over the last 5 years. But all he found was a defensive, distant expression. "Maybe," Ryan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the words before he even spoke them. "Maybe we should take a break from the engagement." Sophia's eyes widened. "What, Ryan? You can't be serious." "Because of one night." "It's not just one night, and you know it. Things have changed, Sophia. You've changed, and I refuse to be your second choice." At that moment, Mason appeared at the garden door. "Ryan, your parents are looking for you. It's time for cake." Ryan took one last look at Sophia, who remained motionless, her words hanging in the air like mist on a winter's morning. Without saying another word, he went back into the pub where his guests were waiting for him with genuine smiles in an off-key version of "Happy Birthday." Later that night, alone in his apartment in downtown Denver, Ryan looked out at the city through his bedroom window. The lights of the building shone like earthly stars, and for the first time in a long time, he felt a strange sense of freedom, mixed with fear of the unknown. His phone vibrated with unread messages from Sophia, but he didn't open them. Instead, he opened his laptop and started researching airline tickets. Maybe it was time to accept that invitation to lead a project in Seattle. Maybe it was time to find out who Ryan Anderson was without Sophia Parker. The night that should have been a celebration had turned into a turning point in his life. As the clock ticked down the first minutes of his 31st year, Ryan Anderson made a promise to himself. He would find his own happiness, even if it meant starting again from scratch. 2 weeks after his birthday party, Ryan was on a plane to Seattle. Watching the clouds through the oval window, his laptop rested. Clothes on the table containing the latest emails exchange with Horizon Technologies, the company that had recruited him to lead their new software development project. The decision to take the job in Seattle wasn't just an escape, it was a chance for a fresh start. Mason had tried to convince him to stay in Denver, arguing that he was acting impulsively, but Ryan knew he needed physical distance to process everything that had happened. Sophia kept sending him messages alternating between apologies and accusations of exaggeration on his part. The last one read, "You're throwing away 5 years because of a misunderstanding." Ryan didn't reply. Silence sometimes said more than 1,000 words. The apartment that Horizon Technologies had rented for him was in Capitol Hill, a vibrant neighborhood full of cultural life. As he unpacked his things that first night, Ryan realized that he had brought back fewer physical memories of Sophia than he had imagined. Perhaps his subconscious had known for some time that something was wrong. The next morning, he decided to explore the neighborhood before his first day at work. Seattle's humid air was different from Denver's dry climate, and the tree-lined streets offered the perfect setting for organizing her thoughts. He found a cafe called Analog Coffee, which seemed to promise the kind of welcoming atmosphere he needed. First time here, the barista asked as she prepared his coffee. Her name tag read, "Madison." "That obvious?" Ryan smiled, noticing how she manipulated the professional camera that rested on the counter between services. "You have that new in town look that I know well," she replied, adjusting her vintage framed glasses. "I'm a photographer in my spare time, and that look is one of my favorite subjects to capture." There was something comforting about the way Madison spoke, direct but gentle. Her brown eyes conveyed a genuine curiosity that made Ryan feel instantly at ease. "Actually, I've just moved. I work in software development, and I got an opportunity here." "You left a lot behind, and let me guess, Denver." Ryan arched his eyebrows, surprised. "How did you?" Madison pointed her backpack. "Your Broncos keychain delivered. Besides, you guys from Colorado have a particular way of dressing, lots of flannel and hiking boots." The remark made him laugh for the first time in weeks. "Guilty as charged, but I intend to adapt to Seattle style pretty quickly." "Don't worry, we love flannel here too." She winked, handing him his coffee. "And if you need any tips on the city or want to know some interesting places to photograph, just come and see me." That brief interaction stayed in Ryan's mind all the way to Horizon Technologies. The modern glass and steel building reflected the morning light, and for a moment he felt that familiar mix of anxiety and excitement that precedes every new beginning. His first week passed in a blur of meetings, presentations, and adapting to the new team. The project was exactly the challenge he needed. An artificial intelligence system for energy optimization in commercial buildings. But in the quiet moments when the office emptied and he found himself alone with his thoughts, the doubts returned. The following Saturday, Ryan returned to Analog Coffee. Madison was there, this time on the other side of the counter, taking pictures with her camera. She smiled when she saw him. The Denver developer survived the first week. Barely. Ryan admitted, taking a seat at one of the nearby tables. "I'm still adjusting to the hard time zone." Madison lowered her camera, studying him for a moment. "You know what you need? An afternoon of photographic exploration. Nothing heals a broken heart like seeing the city through a different lens." "How do you?" "I'm a photographer. Remember, it's my job to capture untold stories." She hesitated for a moment. "Besides, I recognize that look. I've been there." Ryan considered the offer. Normally, he'd turn it down. It was too early. He was still processing everything, but there was something about Madison's frank, unassuming manner that made him want to let down his defenses. "You know what? You're right. I really need to see the city through different eyes." Madison smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her face. "Great. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., I can show you some of my favorite places to photograph." As he walked back to his apartment that evening, Ryan realized that for the first time since his birthday, he hadn't checked his phone for messages from Sophia. The knot in his chest, although still present, seemed a little less tight. Seattle was unfolding in front of him like a blank canvas, waiting to be filled with new memories, new stories, and maybe, just maybe, an afternoon of photography with an observant barista was exactly what he needed to start painting this new phase of his life. Sunday dawned with a typical Seattle drizzle, but that didn't dampen Ryan's enthusiasm as he waited for Madison at the entrance to Analog Coffee. She arrived promptly at 2, carrying 2 cameras and a colorful umbrella, ready to see Seattle like never before. Madison asked, holding out one of the cameras. It was a vintage Nikon with a few scratches that told stories of countless photographic adventures. "I don't know if I'm very good with cameras," Ryan admitted, holding the equipment carefully. The last time he had photographed something was on his birthday, and those memories still hurt. "The beauty of photography is not in the technique," but in the look, Madison explained, adjusting the camera settings for him. It's like programming. Sometimes the simplest code solves the most complex problems. They began their journey through Pike Place Market with a Sunday bustle, created a kaleidoscope of colors and faces. Madison showed Ryan how to capture seemingly ordinary moments: a fish vendor smiling at a child, a street musician playing the saxophone, an elderly couple picking flowers together. "See that lady over there?" Madison pointed to a woman of about 70 who was meticulously arranging her flower stands. "She's been here every day for 40 years. Her husband used to help her before he passed away. Now she keeps the tradition alive." Ryan watched the lady through his lens, capturing the moment when she smiled softly as she arranged a bouquet of lilies. "How do you know so much about the people here?" Asking questions, listening to stories. "It's surprising how much people share when you show genuine interest." Madison replied, photographing a group of seagulls flying over the market. As the afternoon progressed, they ventured into hidden alleys and secret staircases that Ryan would never have discovered on his own. Madison took him to the top of an old industrial building converted into an art space from where they had a panoramic view of the city. "This is my favorite place," she said, taking a seat on the edge of the terrace. "I come here when I need to clear my head or find inspiration." Ryan took a few photos of the skyline, admiring how the clouds created dancing shadows on the skyscrapers. "It's amazing how you can see beauty in everything." "It wasn't always like this," Madison confessed, putting down her camera. 3 years ago, I went through a complicated divorce. Photography was my therapy. I learned to look for light, even on the darkest days." This revelation took Ryan by surprise. Madison seemed so secure, so at peace with herself. How did you cope?" "One day at a time, one photo at a time." She smiled, a smile that carried understanding and strength. "Do you know what I've discovered? Sometimes we need to change our perspective to see the beauty that has always been there." They continued exploring the city, stopping at small cafes and art galleries. In each place, Madison had a story to tell, a unique perspective to share. Ryan found himself laughing more than he had in weeks, and Sophia's unanswered messages seemed more and more distant. In the late afternoon, sitting on a bench in the Olympic Sculpture Park, they reviewed the photos they had taken. Ryan was surprised by some of his captures. There was something honest and raw about them, even if they were technically imperfect. "You have a natural eye for this," Madison commented, going through the images on Ryan's camera, "especially this one." She showed him a photo he had taken of her without her noticing, concentrating on photographing an elderly couple dancing in the park. "It was a spontaneous moment," Ryan explained, feeling suddenly aware of how he had captured Madison's serene expression, the wind playing with her dark hair. "The best moments usually are," she replied, handing the camera back. Their fingers touched briefly, and Ryan felt something different, a gentle electric current that had nothing to do with photographic equipment. As the sun began to set, tinting the Seattle sky with shades of pink and orange, Ryan realized that he hadn't checked his phone once all afternoon. More than that, for the first time since his birthday, he didn't feel that constant weight on his chest. "Thanks for today," he said as they walked back to Analog Coffee. "I think it's exactly what I needed." Madison smiled, that sincere smile that seemed to light up her brown eyes. "Sometimes all we need is to see the world through a different lens, to realize that there are many more possibilities than we imagined." As they said goodbye, Ryan felt a familiar hesitation, that urge to prolong the moment, to say something more, but Madison seemed to understand. "Same time next Sunday," she suggested, putting away her cameras. "There's still a lot of Seattle for you to discover." Ryan nodded, feeling a genuine smile forming on his lips. "I can't wait." Returning to his apartment that evening, Ryan connected the camera to his laptop and spent hours reviewing the day's photos. Each image told a story, revealed a piece of Seattle that now felt a little more like home. And in every photo where Madison appeared, even by chance, there was something magnetic, something that made him want to capture more moments like those before going to sleep. He did something he hadn't done for weeks. He opened his personal blog and started writing. The words flowed naturally, telling of an afternoon of discoveries through vintage lenses, and how sometimes you have to lose something to find a new way of seeing the world. Ryan's routine in Seattle was beginning to take shape. Mornings at Horizon Technologies were filled with coding and meetings, while afternoons often ended at Analog Coffee, where conversations with Madison became deeper and deeper. After 3 consecutive Sundays of photographic exploration, something was starting to change inside him. "Your code seems more elegant lately," commented Rachel, his teammate, during a review session. "There are fewer redundancies, more fluidity." Ryan smiled, recognizing that his new perspective through the camera lens was somehow influencing even his programming. Madison had taught him to see patterns where before he only saw chaos. To find beauty in simplicity. That evening, while organizing some photos on her laptop, an Instagram notification made her heart stop. Sophia had posted a photo with Bradley at a restaurant in Denver. The caption read, "New beginnings." The pain she felt was different this time, more distant, like an old scar that occasionally itches. Her phone vibrated with a message from Madison. "Cary Park, 20 minutes, bring your camera, trust me." When he arrived at the park, he found Madison setting up her camera on a tripod. The sun was setting over Seattle, creating a spectacle of colors that reflected in the water of the bay. "Have you ever heard of long exposure photography?" she asked without taking her eyes off the equipment. "It's when you leave the shutter open for longer, allowing the light to tell its own story." Ryan watched as she demonstrated the technique, capturing the trails of light from the cars passing through the city below. "It's amazing how something so quick can create something so permanent," he commented. "Like relationships," Madison replied, adjusting her focus. "Sometimes we need time and exposure to see the true impact they leave on our lives." There was something different in the air between them that night. Maybe it was the golden light of twilight, or maybe it was the weeks of growing intimacy through conversations and shared photographs. "I saw Sophia's photo today," Ryan admitted, surprising himself with the calmness in his voice. With Bradley, Madison lowered her camera, turning to him. "And how do you feel about that?" "Honestly, less hurt than I expected. It's like I'm looking through a different lens now." Madison's smile lit up her face. "You know what that means? You're ready for your first exposure." "My what?" "Photographic exhibition. I have a friend who runs a small gallery on Capitol Hill. He organizes exhibitions of amateur photographers. Once a month, your photos from the last few weeks. They tell a powerful story of transformation." Ryan felt a mixture of fear and excitement. "I don't know if I'm ready for that." "No one is really ready to expose themselves," Madison said softly, stepping closer. "But sometimes it's exactly what we need." The wind blew harder, ruffling Madison's dark hair. Ryan resisted the urge to smooth it down, realizing how his feelings for her had quietly evolved over the last few weeks. "Why do you do that?" he asked. "Help me so much." Madison hesitated, biting her lower lip slightly. "Because when I went through my divorce, no one showed me how to find beauty again. I had to figure it out on my own. And when I saw you that first day in the cafe, with that lost look on your face, well, sometimes the universe puts the right people in our path." Just then, a stronger gust of wind knocked the tripod off balance. The two of them moved simultaneously to hold the camera, their hands meeting in the process. The touch this time lasted longer than necessary. "Madison, I know," she interrupted softly. "Not yet. You're still in the process of healing. And I respect that." Besides, she smiled, "we have an exhibition to organize." Over the next few weeks, Ryan immersed himself in the process of selecting and preparing the photos for the exhibition. Each image represented a moment in his Seattle journey, from the first shaky shots of Pike Place Market to the most recent portraits of the city he now called home. Madison helped him choose the best shots, but insisted that the final story should be told by him. "It's your memories, your transformation," she explained. "I just help you find your way." One evening, while they were working on the captions for the photos on Ryan's dining table, he came across an image he didn't remember taking. It was Madison at Analog Coffee the first day they met, smiling as she adjusted her camera. "How did that picture get here?" he asked, surprised. "Mason sent it. Apparently he took it when he came to visit you last month." Madison studied the photo curiously. "He's got a good eye." Ryan looked at the picture with renewed attention. It was the exact moment when his life began to change, captured forever in pixels and light. "This needs to be in the exhibition," he decided. "Why?" "Because it marks the beginning of something new, the moment when I began to see the world and myself in a different way." Madison stared at him for a long moment, her brown eyes reflecting something deeper than simple understanding. "You've really changed in these 2 months." "Thanks to you." "No," she smiled, gently touching his arm. "You've always had that strength inside you. You just needed the right lens to see it through." The night of the exhibition came faster than Ryan expected. The small gallery on Capitol Hill, with its white walls and strategic lighting, was transformed. 25 photographs chronicled his journey through the last 2 months in Seattle, each carefully selected to convey not just moments but emotions. "Nervous?" Mason asked, adjusting his tie. He had flown from Denver especially for the event, a surprise organized by Madison. "More than I should be," Ryan admitted, watching the first guests arrive. "It's strange to expose so many pieces of my life like this." The gallery gradually began to fill up. Ryan recognized faces from Horizon Technologies, regulars from Analog Coffee, and local artists that Madison had featured during her photographic explorations. Each person stopped in front of the photos, some smiling in recognition, others immersed in silent contemplation. Madison arrived a little later, wearing a simple black dress that made her look even more elegant than usual. Her eyes met Ryan's immediately, and she smiled that smile that had become her anchor over the last few months. "People are loving it," she whispered, moving closer. "Especially the series on urban transformation. You've managed to perfectly capture how the city changes at dusk." Ryan was about to reply when his heart stopped. There at the entrance to the gallery was Sophia. She looked different than he remembered, thinner, perhaps, or just changed by time and circumstance. Their gazes met across the crowded space. Madison noticed the change in her posture. "That's her, isn't it?" "Yes," Ryan replied, surprised at his own calm. "Mason must have mentioned the exhibition. Do you want me to stay with you?" "No," he smiled briefly, touching Madison's arm. "I think I need to do this alone." Sophia approached hesitantly, her green eyes scanning the photographs on the walls. "That's impressive, Ryan. I didn't know you had such talent." "Neither did I," he replied honestly. "I've discovered a lot about myself in the last few months." A heavy silence settled between them, laden with unspoken words and apologies never offered. Finally, Sophia spoke. "Bradley and I broke up." Ryan watched her face, looking for any trace of what he used to feel. He found only a soft compassion. "I'm sorry to hear that. I came to Seattle to..." She hesitated. "Actually, I'm not sure why. I came maybe to apologize, or maybe to see if there's still a chance." "Sophia," Ryan interrupted her gently, "look around. Do you see that picture over there?" He pointed to a picture of Pike Place Market at dawn. "It was taken in my first month here, when everything still hurt." "And that one?" He pointed to another showing a group of street musicians in a colorful alley. "That's when I started to rediscover the joy in the little things." Her eyes moved to the photo Mason had taken of Madison at Analog Coffee. "And that represents the moment when my life began to really change, not because I was running away from the past, but because I was finding a new future." Sophia followed her gaze to Madison, who was chatting with some guests on the other side of the gallery. "She seems special," she is, Ryan confirmed, "but more importantly, she helped me realize that I am too." A small sad smile formed on Sophia's lips. "You're different, more sure of yourself." "People change, Sophia. Sometimes we need to lose something precious to find something even more valuable ourselves." At that moment, the gallery curator called everyone's attention for a short speech. Ryan watched as Sophia discreetly made her way to the exit, stopping only to take one last look at the photographs. It was a different goodbye this time. There was no bitterness, just acceptance, and perhaps a little gratitude. Madison approached after Sophia left, her fingers intertwining naturally with Ryan's. "Are you okay?" "More than fine," he replied, squeezing her hand gently. "You know that moment when you finally managed to focus on an image that was blurry, like when you adjust the manual focus on an old lens?" "Exactly, that's how I feel now, like everything is finally clear." The rest of the evening passed like a blur of conversations, congratulations, and glasses of wine. Several photos were sold, including a series capturing the sunrise from different points in Seattle. But for Ryan, the real success of the exhibition wasn't in the sales or the compliments. It was the way each image told not only his story of loss and recovery, but also his discovery of a new kind of love, a love that began with self-acceptance and grew through the lens of understanding and patience. When the last guest had left, Ryan and Madison stood in the empty gallery looking at the photographs in the soft light. "What do you think comes after this?" she asked. Ryan smiled, pulling her closer. "I think it's time to start a new album, this time together." A week after the exhibition, Ryan found a brown envelope on his desk at Horizon Technologies. Inside was a single photograph of him and Madison dancing in the gallery after the event, captured by Mason. Without them noticing, on the back his friend had written, "Sometimes we need others to capture our truest moments." The image made him smile, remembering how the night had ended after everyone had left. Madison had connected her phone to the gallery speakers, playing Frank Sinatra's "Fly Me to the Moon." "Every photographer needs to be able to dance," she had said, pulling him into the center of the space. Among the photographs chronicling their healing journey, they had created another special memory. Earth to Ryan. Rachel's voice brought him back to the present. "The client from Australia is on the line." The following weeks brought a different routine. Ryan and Madison began to document Seattle from a new perspective, no longer as a city of healing, but as the scene of something being born. Their mornings at Analog Coffee turned into full breakfasts, and their Sunday afternoons exploring the city took on a deeper meaning. "I have a proposal for you," Madison said one particularly sunny afternoon as they photographed boats on Lake Union. Seattle Arts Magazine wants to do a story on local emerging photographers. I suggested a collaborative series of ours. Ryan lowered his camera, puzzled. "How collaborative?" "Your perspective as a programmer combined with my experience of photography. I thought I'd call it Visual Codes, an exploration of how technology and art intertwine in the city." The idea was brilliant, typical of Madison, always finding ways to bring different worlds together. "That would be amazing," Ryan replied, already imagining the possibilities. "We could use multiple exposure to show how codes overlap with urban architecture." "Exactly," Madison smiled, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "And we could incorporate elements of programming into the photographs themselves." As they discussed the details of the project, Ryan realized how his life had changed over the last few months. The insecure man who had arrived in Seattle hurt by Sophia's betrayal had transformed into someone who not only embraced new opportunities, but created them. That night, after developing some photos in the small studio Madison kept in her apartment, Ryan noticed a series of old photographs in a box. They were images of her with her ex-husband, kept not with bitterness, but as part of their history. "Sometimes I still look at them," Madison admitted, taking a seat next to him on the sofa. "Not with nostalgia, but with gratitude. Every relationship teaches us something, even when it ends." Ryan took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "What did your marriage teach you?" "That self-love is not selfishness, that sometimes we need to lose ourselves completely to really find ourselves." She paused, studying his face. "And what about you? What did you learn from Sophia?" "That sometimes what seems like the end is just the beginning of something better." He smiled, gently touching her face. "That some people come into our lives not to stay, but to show us the way to who we should meet." The kiss that followed was different from the others they had shared. There was a certainty in it, a silent promise that this connection, this mutual understanding, was something rare and precious. The following week, while they were working on the project for Seattle Arts, Mason called with some news. Bradley had been transferred to the London office and Sophia was finding it difficult to cope with the distance. Ryan realized that the news didn't provoke any emotion other than mild compassion. "Do you want to talk about it?" Madison asked, noticing his thoughtful expression as they edited photos on her laptop. "Not really," Ryan answered honestly. "It's like looking at an old photograph. You recognize the moment, but it no longer has the power to affect you." Madison smiled, leaning over to kiss his cheek. "You know what that means? You're really healed." The Visual Codes project began to take shape. In surprising ways, Ryan developed a program that transformed lines of code into visual patterns, which were then superimposed on Madison's photographs of a city. The result was a unique fusion of technology and art that perfectly captured the essence of modern Seattle. One afternoon, while preparing the presentation for the magazine, Ryan found Madison crying silently in her studio. On the table in front of him was a photo of the two of them in Kerry Park, taken by a tourist weeks ago. "What's wrong?" he asked, worried. "It's silly." She wiped away her tears, smiling. "It's just that after my divorce I didn't think I'd find someone who understood me so completely, someone who saw the world the way I did." Ryan hugged her from behind, both of them looking at the photograph. "It's not silly, it's exactly how I feel, as if we'd spent our lives photographing in black and white, and suddenly we discovered color." Madison turned in his arms, her eyes meeting his. "Ready to reveal our next story? With you as my photography partner." Ryan smiled. Always 6 months after the Visual Codes exhibition, which became an unexpected success on the Seattle art scene, Ryan and Madison had established a routine that perfectly blended their professional and personal passions. The small photographic studio in Madison's apartment now also housed a workspace for Ryan, where he developed programs that mixed technology with visual art. One particularly busy Saturday morning at Analog Coffee, where they still maintained a ritual of starting their days, Mason showed up unannounced, carrying a mysterious folder. "You have to see this," he announced, spreading out several photographs on the table. They were images of Ryan's former life in Denver, carefully organized in chronological order. The last photo showed Ryan alone at his 30th birthday party, moments before he confronted Sophia. "Mason, why did you bring this?" Ryan asked, feeling Madison squeeze his hand under the table. "Because I got an interesting proposal from National Geographic." Mason smiled. "They want to do a story on personal transformation through photography, and your story is perfect." Madison leaned over the photos, her professional eyes catching details that others might miss. "It's amazing how his body language has changed over time," she observed. "In the old photos, he's always slightly bent over, as if he's carrying an invisible weight." Ryan had never noticed this before. But she was right. Compared to more recent photos, the difference was remarkable. His current posture conveyed a natural confidence that hadn't existed before. The proposal is to make a documentary series. Mason continued, starting with his life in Denver, the breakup with Sophia, the move to Seattle, and how photography became his path to healing and self-discovery. "And where do I come into that?" Madison asked, already knowing the answer. "You're a fundamental part of the story," Mason replied, the photographer who taught a broken programmer to see beauty through the lens again. Ryan watched Madison process the information. Over the last few months, she had become more than his girlfriend or photographic mentor. She was his partner in every sense, someone who understood both his moments of strength and his vulnerabilities. "There's one more thing," Mason added, pulling an envelope from his briefcase. "Sophia heard about the project and sent this." Inside the envelope was a letter and a single photograph. Ryan and Sophia on the day they met 5 years earlier. The letter was brief but sincere, wishing her happiness and thanking her for being part of her journey. Madison studied the photo with genuine curiosity. "You look so young here," she commented softly, "so full of expectations." "And now?" Ryan asked, looking at his reflection in the cafe window. "Now you look fulfilled," she smiled, "like someone who has found their place in the world." The National Geographic proposal triggered a series of events that turned the following weeks into a whirlwind of activity. Ryan and Madison worked together to select the photos that best told their story, while Mason coordinated the interviews and the logistics of the project. During this process, something unexpected happened. Their individual stories of loss and recovery began to intertwine in deeper ways. Madison's divorce, which had previously seemed like a closed chapter in her life, took on new meanings when seen through the lens of her story with Ryan. "It's funny," she said one night as they were organizing material for the magazine. "When I first met you, I thought I was just helping someone heal. I didn't realize that I was also completing my own healing." Ryan stopped what he was doing and pulled her close. "I think that's how true love works. It's not about one person saving the other, but about two people making each other stronger." The National Geographic article was published 3 months later under the title "Through the Lens of Love, a Story of Transformation." The photographs told not only Ryan's story, but that of everyone who has ever had to reinvent themselves after a loss. On the night of the launch, in a larger gallery than the first, Ryan surprised Madison with a series of photographs he had secretly taken of her over the months. Each image captured a moment when she was completely absorbed in her work, her eyes shining with passion and purpose. "You taught me to see beauty in everything," he said, handing her a small personalized album. "But the greatest beauty I found was in you." Madison opened the album, her hands shaking slightly. On the last page, under a photo of the two of them in Kerry Park, there was a question written in binary code, his language meeting hers in a unique and personal way. "You need to translate it," he smiled, seeing her confused expression. With the help of the program they had developed together, Madison converted the code. Tears came when she read the message, "Marry me." There, among photographs that told of their journey from pain to redemption, Ryan and Madison began a new chapter, no longer as mentor and mentee or as photographer and programmer, but as partners in a story that would continue to unfold one frame at a time. "Yes," she whispered before capturing the moment with a kiss that was worth 1,000 words. And so, through the lens of love and loss, pain and healing, Ryan Anderson found not only his true self, but also his true north. With Madison by his side, he knew that each new dawn would bring new opportunities to capture the beauty of life, no longer in solitude, but in a partnership that transcended the very art that brought them together.